Honestly, I'm super guilty in general of buying books for their cover, but I can't even begin to resist books that are this pretty. Hi, and welcome to the Book Bar, where everything bookish is on the menu. I'm Ann Jeanette Barr, and today is going to be a little different. I'm in between books. I'm not quite ready to give you another book review, partially because I'm reading a series and I want to do it as a whole. And so I thought I would show you some of my prettiest books and tell you a little bit about the Barnes & Noble collectibles. You might have a favorite kind of collection of hardcovers or even paperbacks that are all done by the same designer or illustrator, or you may not even know that that's a thing that some people like. I love watching videos about people's favorite editions of classics or their favorite books, because often when a book does really well, there's a lot of incentive to have special editions printed from various publishers for those collectible editions. And then, of course, books that have been in the public domain for a long time, classics that have been around for, generations, have umpteen different versions of them out in the stores. And a lot of people will collect, a specific series of those. And that's what I've done with this particular series, and I don't think I'll veer from it very much because I love them so much. So yes, this is kind of a review, but spoiler, I love these books. I'll get into a little bit of maybe some of the downsides of them, but overall, I just think that they are gorgeous and totally worth the money. I live in a pretty small city. Juneau is about 35,000 people, even though it's the capital of Alaska. Alaska just doesn't have very many people per capita. And we don't have very many chain stores of any kind, so we definitely don't have any large bookstores. We do have bookstores for sure, and I enjoy purchasing from them, but they have a limited selection, and while I can ask them to buy specific titles for me, and I could maybe even ask them to buy specific editions for me, they may not be able to get them for the same price that I could buy them online or from other vendors. So I tend to save shopping locally for either used books or for local authors. Every once in a while, if there's something new that's coming out that I just know they're going to have and I don't want to wait, I will go to a local store for that. But I do a lot of online shopping for books, and because we don't have a Barnes & Noble, it took me a few years to even remember that I loved these editions, but they actually ship free to Alaska, which is almost unheard of, especially for heavy new paperback or hardcover books, and they will ship it all here for free. So I have taken advantage of that fact, and that's one of the reasons why I'm collecting this above others. But like I said, it's also inexpensive compared to so many others, and I really do think that they're beautiful. I'm going to do a close-up of each of these books and show you the inside papers, because that's just wonderful. But just to kind of give you an overview of the Barnes & Noble collectible editions, there are these hard leather-bound versions, and then there are flexi-bound, and I'll show you one of those in a minute. And they're all on their website in the section of collectibles, or you can search collectible classics, though that won't give you the whole collection. And they've been doing this for a couple of decades now, where they do these special collectible editions of popular books. Some of them are even a little newer. They're not all classics. Anyway, they do these collectible editions, and then every few years or so, they'll actually pull one design off and maybe do a second, or I don't know if they're on a third printing of any of them, but I know they've done some that were initially this harder cover, and now the flexi bound that's more like a thick paperback cover is the only thing available. So sometimes if you really like a particular version of these Barnes & Noble collectibles, you may have to buy them secondhand. But the great news is these things are so inexpensive to begin with that you really can, you know, collect them, even if you're not wealthy. I have watched for their sales, and sometimes I've been able to get some of these for $5, which is just ridiculous. That's less than it cost them to print it. It's just insane. And then often they're 10 or 15, or I think that the most expensive ones are $25. And honestly, I'm a pretty frugal person. I don't love the idea of spending $25 on a book, but if it's a good hardcover copy of something that I adore, I might. I wouldn't do it for every book, but I would do it, and I have. I've bought some of these, purchased some of them at full price when they weren't having any kind of promotion or they hadn't marked anything down. I often eye beautiful copies online from like Easton Press and other places that do these, you know, really beautiful stitched binding and lots of really pretty little details, and they're super high quality, supposedly, books. But I just can't swallow the price tag. I just stare at them and think, I don't know, maybe 50 years from now, maybe not 50, maybe 30 years from now, I'm going to be wandering in a used bookstore and I'm going to find it and I'm going to grab it. And I do have some copies like that I've gotten used from more expensive lines. But these are not expensive, are beautiful, and in my opinion, durable and worth it. I haven't had any of these for too long because they just haven't been available for too long. And I did read a review. I'll link this below because it's just a great resource. I read a review that talked about the books, explained the differences, and also had a list of all of the versions that Barnes & Noble has put out since they started in like 1992 or something. And this person went through the pros and cons of the different types. And they said that these hardcovers are about 20% leather, so not all leather. It's kind of, you know, it's just a combination of materials, and that the leather flexibound are not leather at all. And they also said that the glue in here will eventually come apart, but I have not seen that so far. You can hear that. They're made to lay flat, so which I really enjoy. So I understand what they're saying. They're saying that this is not going to be as durable as a stitched copy for sure, and that it's possible that this glue is going to come undone. Like I said, I have not seen it. So just an overview. They always have these embossed covers on the hardcover, and on the flexibound they're also, no, they're not embossed. They look embossed though. I'll show you that too. And then these gilded edges, either silver or gold, or sometimes painted edges. I have a few of those. And then they have the ribbon. I haven't cracked this one open yet, obviously. So I haven't gotten the ribbon out, but they come, all of them, with a ribbon. I love that because, you know, finding bookmarks can sometimes be a problem, and bending pages on a beautiful copy like this isn't very appealing. Isn't that pretty though? Okay, I'm going to show you each of them. I'm not going to talk too much. I'm just going to show them to you and do a little bit of voiceover. Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales is one of several that they have that are omnibus versions, editions. That means that they have several different works inside, and of course this is a collection of fairy tales, but there are other omnibus editions that are of a specific author, that have multiple works from that author in them. So this has lots of different fairy tales in it, and it has a beautiful plate here that's a different material, looks like a window. And here's my favorite things. Look at these end papers. They have these illustrations, so pretty. And then font size isn't too bad. It's not too small. The layout is always nice, and this one has doodles, illustrations. I shared a little bit more about this one in my last video, so make sure you check that out. Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. It's a pretty cream cover, gold gilded edges, a gold ribbon. This is a very big book. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Other Stories by Lewis Carroll. So this is an omnibus edition with a different style of illustration, but the spine is still similar to the other. You can see that this includes Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, Through the Looking Glass, Sylvie and Bruno Concluded, and then a lot of poetry. This one has quite a few illustrations, but they are quite small. Moby Dick by Herman Melville. I love this blue. And for this they chose silver gilting, which I think was great, and a blue ribbon. This is evidently how far my son has gotten. The end papers. This one has no illustrations. The Constitution of the United States and select writings of the Founding Fathers. This includes the Federalist Papers. It's very pretty. I haven't taken off this little paper plaque that it came with, which explains what's in it. It says it has On Civil War by Benjamin Franklin, The Boston Massacre by John Hancock, The Declaration of Independence, Common Sense by Thomas Paine, Articles of Confederation, The Federalist Papers, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and George Washington's Farewell Address, as well as a few other things. So this was an essential for school, for sure. And it has We the People embossed here, which is really neat. There's the spine for that one. Gold gilting. And a gold ribbon. Look at that art in these end papers. Here is an Ernest Hemingway omnibus edition. Has 4 novels. I love this cover art. End papers. It's a darker gold ribbon. This one has The Sun Also Rises, For Whom the Bell Tolls, A Farewell to Arms, and Old Man in the Sea. And Dantes, The Divine Comedy. This is the Henry Wadsworth Longfellow translation with illustrations by Gustave Doré. I did read in that other review that if it's a translated work, you may not be able to get the translation that you like, and so it might be worth finding out what other translators are available for a work that wasn't originally written in English, but I think with Longfellow you're probably okay. If you weren't aware, Dante's Divine Comedy is broken into 3 parts. Inferno, which a lot of people have only read that first part, Dante's Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. And I have yet to go through these, but I bought this because I had tried to read Inferno, which was quite depressing and difficult to read. And then someone told me, as you would expect when we're talking about hell, purgatory, and heaven, it gets a little more hopeful, and that I shouldn't just read Inferno. So that's my plan. I would like to read all of them all together. So this has illustration plates. Another critique that I read in that post that I have linked is that when there are illustrations and they've just been copied, that they're often not very sharp and bright, or they don't look as high quality. I would say this is a good example of that, but at the same time, I've seen so many worse copies of illustrations in public domain books that this wouldn't discourage me from buying this edition at all. I still think they're lovely. So now moving on to a section of smaller hardcovers, and I'm not sure what the difference is between that larger size and the smaller size. I mean, why they made that decision, except for maybe these are shorter books. So you can see the size difference here. You just have to look in the description if you're buying it online. Obviously in the store, that's easier. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. This has a little bit of holographic foiling on it, which is neat. Spine, the back, and there's silver gilting. Illustration plates. Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. Super fun. You've got your table of contents here, nice colors and fonts. The Secret Garden. I've also talked about this in other videos because we're going to be reading it this year. I love this edition, and I think this is one of the newer ones. This was created in 2015. The Story of King Arthur and His Knights by Howard Pyle. Written and illustrated by Howard Pyle. And this is actually broken into two books. The first is the Book of King Arthur, and the second is the Book of the Three Worthies. The Three Worthies being Merlin, Sir Pelleas, and Sir Gawain. And then there's this list of illustrations. This is a really pretty book. The Blue Fairy book. This is Andrew Lang, and if you didn't already know, Andrew Lang has lots of different fairy books by color. They're just collections of fairy tales. There's the Blue Fairy book, the Green Fairy book, the Red Fairy book. You get the picture. And this one has that cutout of a different material here, and also some gold and silver foiling. Gold edges. And The Call of the Wild by Jack London. We read this last year, and it's a longer book than it seems because the writing is pretty dense. So even though this is maybe the thinnest out of all of those books that I just showed you, and the font is not small, I'd still say it's definitely worth buying this in this hardcover edition, even though you could find lots of different paperback copies. Now this is a good example of the illustrations are perhaps not the best. I didn't really bother to show my children the illustrations when I was reading this aloud because they're not especially beautiful. But it didn't take away from it, and the rest of the typefacing is really pretty. So that was all the hardcover that have the 20% or so leather. It's kind of like a hard cardboard, chipboard cover with the leather material over it, but it is pretty thick. And these are the flexibound books, which have painted edges, and you can see it's thicker. It definitely feels sturdy, and the binding feels pretty tight. It's definitely not low quality. The paper's quite thick. So I don't know if this is how they plan on doing all of their classics in the future, or if they'll just have the flexibound and the hardcover both as options, these being a little cheaper sometimes. I think some people might just like that this is maybe not quite as heavy. So Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, probably my favorite book of all time. I've read this at least 3 times, and I really do love this edition. Very classy. Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Now, these flexi-bound copies do still come with the ribbon. This one's very pretty. That contrast. I love it. Very pretty. Persuasion by Jane Austen. This one has kind of a lavender painting on the edges and a pink ribbon. Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Has a darker purple. And a gold ribbon. Another Austen, Pride and Prejudice. See that gold. And on the back it has the iconic first line, "It is a truth universally known that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife." Has green edges and a yellow ribbon. They have the other Austens in the same style and format, and I ordered Emma right before Christmas and was so frustrated that it was not able to be sent to me. I think it may be out of print now, so I'm not sure what their plans are for the Austen books, but maybe an omnibus coming out or something like that. So if you're interested in these particular ones, or you're looking to complete your collection, head to Barnes & Noble if you can to snag those. The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Other Stories by Robert Louis Stevenson. The brown painted edges and a gold ribbon. And Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This is different from the other painted, swirly looking. It's the same kind of theme, but I think it's interesting. Red pages and a black ribbon. And honestly, this is one of the things I love. I'm not sure that I have ever had a desire to read Frankenstein until I saw this edition. Obviously it's been on my radar, but I don't go in for much horror, suspense, or even thriller, and so I just wouldn't have gravitated toward this book, but how can you resist something so pretty? So that's my whole collection. I'm going to put it back. So I'd love for you to leave me a comment and tell me if you have any of these, if you collect them, or if not, what is your favorite series of collectible editions to collect, or what would you collect if you could? Would you spring for the Easton Press or something of that caliber if you could do it, or would you just be happy with something like this? Or maybe you have an even less expensive version that you just think the cover art's so beautiful that you would love to own all of those. I love finding new videos about that too, so if you've made a video about your favorite editions of books, let me know for sure in the comments below. And make sure to subscribe for book reviews, my favorite books, how I keep track of my reading, what I read to my children, and anything else bookish that I can think up. I would love to have you here and have you comment on all of the videos that you're enjoying. Let me know what else you think you would enjoy to see here on the Book Bar. Thanks for watching.